My name is Cameron. I thought I knew my wife until her former friend showed me the photos of secret parties she had been attending while I was away. It was then that I understood that everything I believed about our marriage was a carefully crafted illusion. I'd been married to Zoe for 13 years when her ex-friend showed me photos and videos of parties full of men that my wife had attended while I was on the road as a truck driver. In that moment, everything I'd believed about our marriage shattered completely and irreparably. 13 years that had started with genuine partnership and mutual dreams, but had deteriorated into something I hadn't seen clearly because I'd been too busy working to notice the distance growing between us. We met when I was 24 and she was 23. We had both just graduated from college and ended up in Charlotte trying to figure out what to do with our lives. Neither of us had real career prospects yet, and we were drowning in student loan debt. I had a business administration degree that didn't land me any meaningful job offers, and Zoe had a communications degree. Still, she was stuck working long hours in a retail store while sending out resumes whenever she got the chance. We connected almost immediately. It felt like we understood each other's struggles without having to explain them. Within a few months, we started dating seriously and moved in together. From the beginning, our relationship felt like a true partnership. We were both broke, nervous about the future, and unsure what life would bring, but we had each other, and that made everything a little easier. Most evenings after long shifts at work, we would sit together and plan the kind of life we hoped to build once we finally got stable jobs. The little house with a backyard, the family we wanted someday, and the comfortable middle-class life where we wouldn't have to check our bank accounts before buying groceries. Those talks kept us hopeful. After about 18 months of dating, we got married. We couldn't afford a big wedding, so we had a small courthouse ceremony with only our immediate family in attendance. No wedding dress, no fancy reception, no honeymoon, just a simple exchange of vows and a stack of legal papers that officially tied us together as we stepped into a future we still weren't sure about. We moved into a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a rough part of Charlotte, the only place we could afford with our low-paying jobs. The building was old, the walls were thin, and the neighborhood wasn't exactly safe. But we were young, in love, and convinced we would work our way up to something better someday. And in those early days, that belief was enough. I worked all kinds of jobs, trying to find something steady, retail, warehouse shifts, call center positions. Nothing paid well, and none of them offered a real chance to grow. Month after month, I felt stuck in the same place, watching time pass without any real progress in my career. It was frustrating, almost depressing, knowing I was working hard but still barely moving forward. Around the second year of our marriage, I made a decision that would shape the next 10 years of our lives. I chose to become a long-haul truck driver. It wasn't because I dreamed of sleeping in a truck cab or spending my life on endless highways. I chose it because the pay was good and all I needed was a commercial driver's license. No expensive degree, no long training program. It felt like the fastest, most realistic way to earn real money, to save for a house, to finally build the stable future we always talked about. Zoe supported me completely. She understood that my being gone for weeks at a time was a short-term sacrifice that would help us in the long run. She believed in the plan and in me. So I got my CDL, joined a national trucking company, and started hauling freight across the country. I'd be on the road for 2 or 3 weeks straight, then come home for only a few days before heading out again. And honestly, the first few years were beautiful in their own way, even with the distance. Sometimes Zoe came with me on the shorter regional routes. She'd sit in the passenger seat, legs tucked up, talking about everything and nothing while the miles rolled by. She kept me awake, kept me laughing, kept me company. We talked for hours during those drives about how all this sacrifice was temporary and worth it. We talked about when we'd finally start a family once we were financially stable. Back then, it felt like we were a team. Even though we weren't always in the same place, we were moving in the same direction. The time apart made our reunions deeper, stronger, and more meaningful. But time has a way of changing things. So slow you don't notice it happening. By the 5th year of our marriage and my 3rd year working as a truck driver, Zoe and I had finally saved enough money to start dreaming bigger. We found a house we loved in a nicer part of Charlotte. It had 3 bedrooms, a quiet street, and was in a good school district for the kids we planned to have one day. But just having the down payment wasn't enough. We still needed money for closing costs, new furniture, and an emergency fund in case life threw us something unexpected. We wanted to feel financially secure before taking on a mortgage. So I pushed myself harder. I started taking longer routes, driving 14 hours a day, sometimes more. The money was good, and for the first time, it felt like we were making real progress toward the life we had talked about for years. We were building savings. We were getting closer to our dream home. We were doing things the right way. I believed Zoe understood what I was doing. I thought she saw how hard I was working, how much I was sacrificing. I honestly thought she was proud of me. But around the 7th year of our marriage, I began to notice changes in Zoe. Small at first, but enough to unsettle me. When I came home from my routes, her mood felt different. She wasn't as warm or excited to see me as she used to be in our earlier years. She still greeted me, always polite, always calm, but the spark, the smile that used to light up her whole face, wasn't there anymore. I told myself it was normal, that long-term relationships naturally lose some of the early fire and settle into routine. I also assumed she was just frustrated about how often I was gone, but didn't want to complain directly. Months went by, and nothing changed. I kept coming home to that same distance, and then I'd leave again for another long haul. I assured myself that things would get better once we bought the house and I could take shorter routes. Once life slowed down just a little. Sometimes, I tried to surprise her by coming home early. I'd finish a route quicker than expected, or I'd intentionally pick shorter hauls so I could walk through the door unexpectedly and make her smile like before. But more and more often, I'd come home to a dark, quiet house. No lights on. No Zoe. I'd call her, and she'd tell me she was at a friend's place, that she had been bored and lonely, so she decided to go out. She always promised she'd be home soon, and I believed her. Why wouldn't I? It made sense that she'd want company while I was away so often. I had no reason to doubt her, not then. By the 8th year, I decided to cut back on work. Not completely, but enough to give me more time at home. I chose shorter routes, came back more often, and tried hard to be present, even if it meant our savings grew more slowly. I hoped that if I were around more, Zoe would seem happier, that she would feel connected to me again. Maybe we could get back the closeness we once had. But even with me home more regularly, nothing really improved. The distance stayed. I felt lost. I didn't know how to close the growing gap between us. I didn't know if this was normal for marriages after many years, or if something deeper, something serious, was happening right in front of me, and I just couldn't see it yet. After we made the first down payment, something in Zoe changed again. This was around our 9th year of marriage. She suddenly stopped going out as much. She started staying home more, being present in a way she hadn't been for a long time. She began cooking meals for us again. She asked about my business trips with genuine interest, not forced politeness. She even started making small plans for our future, things like vacations we could take or upgrades we might make to our new home. And she touched me more. It reminded me of how she used to be back when we first got married. I felt a huge sense of relief. I thought the strange distance she'd been in was just a phase. I believed we were finally okay again, that the marriage had gone through a tough season and had come out stronger on the other side. For the next few years, everything seemed mostly normal. Not perfect, but stable and comfortable. We began trying for kids. I truly believed we had survived the hard times, that whatever had gone wrong was behind us, and we were finally back to being us. Everything fell apart in just one afternoon. I had been home for a few days between long trucking routes. I was supposed to leave again the next morning for a cross-country haul, so I was spending the day doing laundry, folding clothes, and getting my gear ready. That's when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but it had a local area code. I normally ignore calls like that, but something made me answer. A woman spoke. I knew the voice almost immediately. It was Brianna, one of Zoe's closest friends. I hadn't talked to her in years. Her voice sounded unsure as she asked if we could speak somewhere private. She said it was important and that it was about Zoe. Unsure of what she had to say about my wife, I told her I was listening, but she insisted it wasn't something she could tell me over the phone. She said we needed to meet face to face. That instantly raised red flags. Men get tricked, set up, and accused of all kinds of things they didn't do. I wasn't going to walk into some random situation blindly. So I told her I'd meet her, but only in a public place. Somewhere open, with people around. She agreed. We decided on a popular Starbucks store later that afternoon. I drove there, wondering what this could be about. What could Brianna want to discuss about Zoe that would require an in-person meeting? When I walked in, Brianna was already at a small table in the corner. I sat down and asked her straight, "What is this about? What happened with Zoe?" Brianna took a deep breath and told me something that froze me to the core. She said that while I had been away on the road all these years, she and Zoe had gone to certain parties together. Private parties held in apartments by groups of men. Nights out I never knew existed. Places Zoe never mentioned. Brianna said she didn't know how far Zoe may have gone, but the tone of her voice made the meaning painfully clear. These weren't innocent hangouts. These were situations where cheating could easily happen. I was defensive. I told Brianna that this didn't sound like Zoe at all, that my wife wasn't that type of person. I said she must be remembering wrong. But Brianna didn't argue with me. She simply unlocked her phone, opened her gallery, and slid the screen toward me. My entire world came crashing down. There were photos of Zoe wearing tight, revealing outfits I had never seen before, standing with people I had never met. Then there were videos. Zoe is dancing at a party. One guy's hand on her waist. Another video of a man leaning in, whispering something in her ear, while she laughed like she had no care in the world. There were picture after picture of her holding drinks, surrounded by groups of men, smiling and relaxed, living a life I had no idea existed. I was shocked. It was like my brain couldn't keep up with what my eyes were seeing. I finally managed to ask Brianna why she was telling me all of this. Her face changed. She explained that she had been struggling to tell me for a while because of her conscience. It was hard to believe her because she was in some of the images she sent to me, and she took some herself. Even though her excuses don't make much sense, the photos were still real. She sent all the images and videos to my phone, told me I deserved to know the truth about what Zoe had been doing while I was out working. Then she stood up and left. I drove home in complete silence. The radio was off, the streets were blurry, and my thoughts kept spinning. My mind felt both full and empty at the same time. I was too overwhelmed to even hold one steady thought. When I finally walked into the apartment, Zoe was there. She was cheerful and relaxed. I looked at her and saw a stranger. I asked her casually about Brianna, if they had talked recently. The change in her face was instant. She said she and Brianna weren't speaking anymore, and the friendship was basically over. That confirmed my doubts about everything. Brianna hadn't told me out of kindness. She wanted revenge. But that didn't make the things she told me any less true. I asked Zoe where she really was during the years. She told me she was with friends while I was on the road. I queried her if she had been going to parties, events with lots of men, places she had never mentioned. She denied everything immediately, said she'd only been with female friends. She didn't even hesitate, not 1 second. Her lies came out smooth and confident, like she'd practiced them. So I took out my phone. I showed her one of the pictures, her in a dress I'd never seen before, standing in an apartment I didn't recognize, surrounded by people I didn't know. Zoe froze. Then she whispered that she didn't remember that photo. I showed her another photo, and another. Then the videos, her dancing with different men. Her denials were shattered. She started crying as she struggled to explain everything at once. She said she'd been lonely because I was gone so much. She felt invisible, unloved, and thought I was cheating on her when I was away for weeks. She only went to those parties because she needed to feel seen, valued, and noticed. She swore she never slept with anyone while at those parties, claiming they were just parties. She added that she stopped going years ago because she realized it was empty and meaningless, saying she chose me, chose our marriage. But none of that mattered anymore. The timeline didn't matter. What she did or didn't do physically didn't matter. What mattered was the secrecy, years of it. The double life she lived as she accused me while I was breaking my body on highways to build a future for us. I couldn't look at her. I just stood there, holding my phone, staring at the evidence of her betrayal, feeling everything inside me collapse at once. I didn't yell or argue. I just grabbed my jacket, my keys, and my half-packed work bag, then walked out. She called after me, shouting that Brianna was lying to tear us apart, that I needed to hear her side, that she never actually cheated. I didn't turn around. I just got into my truck, closed the door, and drove away from our apartment. Instead of leaving for my scheduled route the next morning, I left that night. But I didn't go home after the delivery. I took another load, then another, chaining deliveries back to back. Days blurred into nights. A week passed, then 2. 3 weeks disappeared into the hum of tires on asphalt and the endless highway lights. Zoe called constantly, left dozens of voicemails and hundreds of text messages, each one begging, crying, explaining, promising. I didn't delete a single message, but I didn't answer any. I couldn't. Most nights, I parked in truck stop lots and stared at my phone, reading her messages over and over. I watched her desperation spill across the screen, her panic at my silence. But I felt nothing, just a cold, empty hollow where my trust and love used to be. One night, about 6 weeks into my endless time on the road, I stopped at a rest area in Montana. I sat alone in the cab of my truck, staring at the dull shine of my wedding ring. And in that quiet, I realized something I hadn't fully admitted before. My marriage was gone. The story I had been telling myself, the fiction we'd both maintained, was over. My marriage had died years ago, when Zoe built a life I knew nothing about. I was only just seeing the truth. I hadn't lost my marriage. I had finally accepted it. After weeks on the road, I drove back to Charlotte. When I walked into our apartment, Zoe ran toward me, arms open, trying to hug me, trying to speak. I moved past her without a word, my mind focused on gathering the essentials: birth certificates, financial records, vehicle titles, everything I would need for what came next. I told her quietly and evenly that I was filing for divorce because the marriage was over. There was nothing left to discuss or reconcile. She collapsed on the floor, sobbing, begging me not to do it. She said we could try anything, that we could fix this, that she loved me and had never stopped loving me. But love without trust isn't love. It's just an attachment. I had no trust left. I couldn't rebuild it. I couldn't forget what I had seen, couldn't unknow the life she had been living behind my back, and I had to press her to get the truth. The next day, I initiated the divorce, hired an attorney, began the slow process of dissolving 13 years of marriage. I moved most of my belongings into storage and started living in my truck full-time. I parked at different truck stops and rest areas, used gym showers, and drifted through that transient existence while the divorce worked its way through the courts. The road became my refuge. Silence and solitude became my only companions. The divorce dragged on for about 8 months before it was finally over. North Carolina law required that we live separately for a while before filing, and that we divide all the assets we had accumulated during the marriage. We had put roughly $40,000 into the house we bought together. Money I had earned through countless hours on the road, long nights behind the wheel, and years of sacrifice, missing birthdays, anniversaries, and quiet moments at home. Every dollar represented the life I had poured into building something for us. Zoe had contributed very little financially. She'd done a few part-time online jobs here and there, nothing steady, nothing that added up to much. Almost all of the money for the house and everything else had come from my trucking income, earned with sweat, exhaustion, and relentless effort. But North Carolina was an equitable distribution state. That meant she was entitled to a share of the marital assets, no matter who had actually earned what. When the house finally sold, her share came to about half of what we had accumulated. Even though nearly all of it had come from me, part of me burned to fight it, to argue that she didn't deserve a cent of what I had earned. But I didn't care enough to argue. I didn't want another battle. I just wanted to be free to move on with my life. Those thousands of dollars were a small price to pay for liberation from someone who had deceived me for years. The divorce was finalized on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in a Charlotte courtroom. The hearing was brief. The judge approved our settlement agreement, signed the papers, and just like that, the marriage was officially over. I walked out of that courthouse feeling lighter than I had in months. I tried not to care about the money I'd lost or the possessions I had to part with. Looking back now, almost 2 years since Brianna showed me those photos, I understand things much more clearly. I've learned that physical absence doesn't excuse emotional betrayal. I had been gone so often, working long hours, trying to build a future for us. But Zoe's choices were still hers. Attending parties, living a secret life, lying over and over, none of that was forced by my job. I learned that financial sacrifice without emotional connection only creates distance and resentment. I had poured myself into earning money, saving, planning for the future, assuming that was enough. But I ignored what she really needed: my presence, my attention, my care. Money couldn't replace that. I learned how easily people can live double lives. Zoe had played the part of a devoted wife while secretly building a world I knew nothing about. Lies became her habit, and she convinced herself they were justified. I also learned that sometimes the person who exposes betrayal has selfish motives, but the betrayal itself remains real. Brianna may have told me the truth out of revenge, not conscience. Yet the truth didn't change. Her actions were still a violation of our marriage. Most importantly, I learned that trust, once completely broken, cannot be rebuilt. Even if Zoe never physically cheated, the years of secrecy and deception destroyed the foundation of our relationship. I couldn't stay married to someone who hid so much from me. Some people think I overreacted. They say I should have gone to counseling, that her loneliness and my absence were excuses to forgive rather than divorce. But they don't understand the scope of the deception. They don't know about the years of empty houses, the vague excuses, the constant hiding. This wasn't a single mistake. It was a deliberate, sustained choice. I wasn't perfect either. I was absent. I focused too much on work. I should have noticed the growing distance between us. But I was honest. I was faithful. I worked toward goals we had agreed on together. My flaws didn't justify hers. Now, I'm in a different place. I'm still a trucker, but I work more selectively, shorter routes, regional work instead of coast-to-coast hauls. I prioritize balance, and my life outside of work over maximum earnings. I think about Zoe sometimes. I wonder if she regrets her choices, or if she's found happiness. But mostly, I don't think about her. She's part of my past, a closed chapter that taught me hard lessons, but is finally behind me. Now, I want to turn it over to you. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have taken her words and pretended it never happened, all the while struggling with doubts and questions in your mind? Or would you have done precisely what I did, facing everything head on? Be honest. Tell me what choice you think you would have made in my shoes.